I would like to just welcome everyone today to our HueLife monthly community of practice. It is lovely to see some familiar faces as well as some new faces. I look forward to spending the next hour to hour and a half with all of you learning together. We do have a wonderful guest presenter today, and I'm really excited to introduce you to her. And it should be very fulfilling afternoon of learning from a wise mind. But just quickly, a little bit about HueLife. Hue stands for Human Understanding and Engagement. And we really aim to inspire meaningful action for the greater good through that human understanding and engagement, through facilitation, training, leadership development. You can kind of see on the screen all of the things that kind of we offer to help just build up our communities and organizations. A couple of the objectives that we have here for our community of practice. First is to learn, right? Remembering that the wisdom is in the room, so what we can gain from each other is just absolutely such a valuable experience. Taking time for some reflection, what's been done in application for the future, and thinking back and celebrating on what we've done is that kind of number 4 there, sharing and celebrating. And then also networking. This is a great opportunity to make connections with new people, other facilitators in the area, see what they're doing in their field with their organizations, with their clients, and how can we continue to grow our networks to lean on each other and provide the best facilitation services that we can, because with great facilitation, we know that we can make such impactful, like powerful and wonderful impact on our communities and the world. So once again, thank you so much for being here. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Renee Rubin Ross, who will be leading our community of practice today.
Awesome. Great. And I will share my screen. Thank you, Megan, for the intro. And thank you, HueLife, for hosting. All right. So let's see. So we're talking about inclusive strategic planning in uncertain times. And a little bit about myself. I'm part of the Ross Collective. We guide leaders and organizations in strategic plans and governance processes that deepen social change, racial justice, stakeholder engagement, and community strength. I also direct the Cal State East Bay Nonprofit Management Certificate Program, and I have just written a new book, which I shared with Irina in person in Las Vegas. So inclusive strategic planning for nonprofits. Oh, thank you. And yeah, it just came out over the last few months. This is a 5-step guide to inclusive strategic planning, lots of tools in here. And this conversation today is based on a lot of what's in the book. So, yeah, so I will say a little bit about we do a lot of consulting in Northern California, facilitation of strategic planning. This book originally came out of a lot of questions we were getting from our clients about, well, then what happens? And then what happens? And then what happens? And what's the step after that? And I was like, okay, I could just write this all down and it could be a book. And I did write it down. I started writing it down, and then I had about 30, in the end, about 30 beta readers who gave some feedback. And what they said was, well, this is interesting, but we really want to understand how to do this on our own, because who is the audience for the book? And I thought, well, if the audience is only going to be our clients, we're not going to sell a lot of books. Maybe that's going to be 10 people a year or something like that. But could there be a broader audience of people who want to do this process on their own, on your own, and need the tools to do it? So that's really how the book, in the end, how the final manuscript came out. It's certainly something that we are sending to our potential clients, but at the same time, it's also a resource for consultants, or nonprofit leaders who want to do inclusive strategic planning. And I'm going to explain what that means. So I was like to find out. Oh yeah. Good. I'm sure you know because you have been working with HueLife. Good facilitation practice, sharing our outcomes for our time together. So what we're gonna talk about is your readiness for strategic planning using the matrix outlined in the book, reflecting on a definition of inclusion and thinking about a framework for designing an inclusive process and some considerations for planning in uncertain times. Okay, that's really our conversation today. And so, Megan, I know you have a poll. Yeah. Okay, the question is, what's your experience level with strategic planning? Beginner, advanced beginner, intermediate, advanced. So, um, take a minute to respond to the poll. Oh, I guess I can't see if people have responded. That's funny. I'm used to being oh, okay, there we go. Okay. Used to being a host and being able to see the results. Yes, Megan, you're muted, but I don't know if you have something to say. Go ahead.
Just that I wasn't sure if you could see the results coming in, and it won't let me select because I'm the host. But I would throw myself an intermediate as well. So you've
Ah,
got one
okay.
beginner, two intermediate, and one advanced.
Cool. Okay. Can you share it just for a second? I don't know if people I don't see it yet. Yeah.
And full share result.
hmm hmm Awesome. Okay. So we have, oh, interesting. So we kind of have a range of, and you said you would throw yourself into intermediate. Irina, would you want to go into advanced also?
I would go into advanced, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So yeah, and by the way, this is always designed to, with the idea that we learn from each other. People are at different levels. So if you're just a beginner, we'll, kind of start from the beginning with a little bit of information and then go from there. Okay. So I want to start out with, it's really, really helpful to ground this in our actual experiences. So we're going to do this just as a group conversation. And I'd love to hear from you about what was the best strategic planning process you were a part of. Okay. So, and by the way, I have two screens. I see all of you over here, and my slide deck over there, so I can see what's going on. Yeah. Thoughts? What was your best strategic planning process?
I can share just briefly from the perspective of facilitating it, not so much on the receiving end as a group. The
hmm
best was when people were honest and were able to get
hmm
into some honest reflections and conversations around what keeps them stuck and what do they
hmm
need to be strategic about. So I think that was one of those best experiences where I had a aha moment as a consultant and facilitator, leaning into that conversation and letting the agenda kind of morph from there because people weren't ready to set goals. They just needed to address some of the tensions.
hmm Thank you. Some people are honest.
Hmm.
Yeah. Other
Um,
thoughts? And welcome, Joanna. Yeah, we're just talking about our best strategic planning process.
I can jump in and just share. But I'm struggling to think through like all the ones I've done and which one was the best, but one that's kind of just standing out to me right now was one that really took me by surprise. It's a very small nonprofit organization, and the people that showed up, I thought like, this is it, really. But they were so ready to do the work and so engaged um and what I had kind of made up my, mind like right away, like this is going to be the longest 2 days of my life, ended up being a very rewarding experience just because of their willingness to really lean in, really engage, and really trust me and my co-facilitator and trust in the process.
Mm. Mhm.
That they didn't give any pushback, that they fully embraced everything. We're so thankful for the opportunity to be going through the process that they just welcomed us right in and didn't give us any pushback, and it ended up being incredibly rewarding.
Thank you. And anyone else want to add one?
I think we had one where the participants represented a cross section of the hierarchy. And so we got to see some real diverse perspectives and what people
Mm.
wanted to focus on.
Thank you. Um, Yeah, and I mean, it's funny you mentioned that one. We have a lot of good ones, but I will mention one of the processes we did a couple years ago was with an organization called Youth Alive that does violence prevention in Oakland. And as we were designing the process, they said, we want all of the staff to be part, it was about 60 people. We want all of the staff to be part of focus groups. We want all of the staff to come to the retreat. And we were like, okay, all right, and to come to that strategic planning retreat. It was really about the culture of the organization, really bringing in lots of voices. And we designed something where at that strategic planning retreat, we heard almost every voice in the room, which was really kind of amazing. So it was like right the process itself aligned with the culture of the organization, which was hearing from people and building that ownership. So, yeah. All right. So I'm going to keep going. Um, and I want to talk about a couple of key components of of how inclusive strategic planning works. So the first one is this idea around readiness for planning. Okay. Um, when I was when I was writing the book, I started thinking about this 5-step process, which starts with kickoff and then goes into discovery. There is a spiral somewhere in here, which is oh, right there. So you kind of get this spiral of how the process works: kickoff, discovery, prioritization, planning, and implementation. But then people came to me with a question, which is, okay, what happens if we're not ready for kickoff? Right? Or how do we know if we're ready for kickoff? And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. Lots of times as a consultant, people are coming to us and they're in step one, but there actually is a step zero, right? And so that's where we started thinking about this idea of readiness. So, what kinds of questions do you need to ask? And I think this is becoming so relevant now, and because you might have been ready a year ago for strategic planning and you might have had some challenges come up, and then you might need to kind of go backwards a little bit. So I created this grid or this matrix around at which uh, I can make it a little bit bigger too, to ask some questions about your readiness for planning. Okay, so if you notice, you're looking at your program stability, right? Is it high or low? And you're also looking at your financial stability. Okay. But even before that, so some people say, well, wait a minute, our budget's actually pretty stable, but there's this other issue, which is we are just really, really overwhelmed with our workload right now, and we're not sure we can add this project. So the first question is actually looking at your organization's capacity. Okay. And the question is really, do we have the energy and motivation to dig in to some of the big questions about our organization? And also, given what is on our plate, how important is planning? Okay. So I want to just give you a minute to think about either for your organization or an organization you're working with, depending on what your role is, what how would you answer this? Zachary, you're nodding your head. Tell
Well,
us more. Yeah.
so um, so I just for context, I work for the city of Waco, and we recently went through a reorg uh,
Mm,
early last
hmm
year, late 2024, and the city is finally settling down. But looking at the organization and the needs and the energy and motivation, I think definitely we have those. We have the people that are ready to make the changes and make the improvements now that everybody's settled in their roles. Um, and this is something that has not been done. We have not had strategic planning done in in most of the fastest food organization that I'm aware of, to really
hmm
plan out.
hmm
Now that we've settled and we need to, the game's kind of changed a little bit. Have we strategized what we're going to do going forward? I don't even know if this was conducted prior to the reorg. You know, how critical is that
hmm
to have what is our goal for doing this?
hmm
And
hmm
there in the communication to the team to make sure we're all on the same path and the same goal. So I'm kind of asking myself, you know, where are we at with our energy and motivation? And I think we're there for sure. The budget, you know, that city is what it is. It's kind of locked in, right? So um, I'm trying to decide, mentally, I'm just deciding, you know, is this the right time to do it?
Yeah. And by the way, the whole purpose, thank you for that. Some of the purpose of these questions
Mhm.
is actually to start building ownership for the process, right? So you
Sure.
don't have to engage with that question by yourself, right? I mean, you can say, hey, there's this framework of thinking about readiness, and part of the framework is, do we have that energy and motivation? What do you think? What do you think, team? What do you think? You know, and to use that as as something that you can kind of facilitate.
Mhm.
Um, is Given what's on our plate, how important is planning? Also, so people have different perspectives, and hopefully, as you start to talk about it, you can see, you can create more alignment, and then more buy-in for the work that's coming, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Um, Jennifer, Joanna, anything to add here?
I think sometimes you're kind of just forced by the circumstances where your strategic plan is running out and it's time for a new one. So you just, you know, whether or not people have the energy, you're going to be kind of
Okay.
forced to dig in.
Hmm. All right.
And I
Honest answer. Yeah. All right. Joanna, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I can add. And hi, sorry, I'm in middle of the workday and I'm eating lunch, so I'm off camera and all that.
Oh,
Um,
good.
but yeah, I like the addition that you just made of like how using these questions to help build ownership, because I'm thinking the most recent strategic planning process that I continue to be involved with is at my organization. And there was a lot of pushback of like, we don't have the time to do it. And it's like, that's why we need to do one.
Right.
That
Oh
Yep.
my gosh. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Well, it's that bad.
happens.
Yeah. And thank you for that. And we try to be honest with people about, like, this is another project. You are driving the bus and also changing the tire and maybe helping the kids to figure out what they're going to sing, and all that. Like, so we're not gonna, I think it's important to say this is going to take more capacity. And so you have to kind of think about how is that going to work? But yes, I mean, I just wrote a post about, like, if you're always putting out fires, there's kind of a problem. You need to start working differently.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to keep going here. So then a couple more questions. Assess your financial stability, right? Are we in a place of financial stability? To what extent do we have financial resources? And that is, both money, could be money if you're working with a consultant, or it could be just your time, which is a big investment, to invest in strategic planning. And then also your programmatic stability. You do want that. You do want some stability in your program to before you start thinking about, what are we now trying, what are we now trying to do? Okay. So again, here is the matrix. Should we do strategic planning now? And I would ask you, as you see this, are we, where are you? What color? Yeah. Are you in that yellow, that orange of high program stability and financial stability, or somewhere in the green? Yeah. What do you see?
Hmm. Well, we're definitely in the maybe category. For
Mm-hmm.
sure, where
Mm-hmm.
I'm at. I have a stable program, but there's definitely areas of opportunity that some strategic planning so we can get a good flight path to get to us to
Mm-hmm.
the, ho-
Mm-hmm.
to improve the stability. Is
Yeah.
where I'm at right now. That's where my mind's at.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Mm-hmm.
took over this program where it was we've got some key people that do a very, very good job, but there's been no, thorough long-term planning
Yeah.
to get to that stable point. And that's what we need to do.
Mm-hmm. 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 And other thoughts? I know we just started working with an organization um, that it does amazing national work nationally on environmental issues. They have hit some big budget cuts or potential
Mhm.
budget cuts coming up in the next couple of years. And
Yeah.
so they're not doing a 3-year strategic plan right now. What they are doing is they're instead, so the question we get is, what about if you're in that maybe or even no? What should you do? And what you can do is you can think about what do you need to focus on and create a 1 or 2 year action plan towards that. So that might be, okay, we need to stabilize our funding over the next 1 to 2 years, and we're going to create some clear goals and see who has ownership over those goals. So it is, in other words, strategic planning can be smaller or larger, but depending on the context. Okay. Yeah, I think I need to add a slide around what to do. But any other thoughts about where you are? Jennifer, Joanna, you're yeah. Yeah, are you green, orange? Yeah. Or yeah.
Well, our department is in the process of starting another strategic plan, but I'm not working
Hmm.
on that one. There's a couple other planners that it's going off to. So,
Okay. Okay. So as far as you know, they're in at least green or orange, maybe.
yeah. Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Renee, I had a curiosity around when departments, as you're saying,
Hmm.
Jennifer, is going through another strategic plan, is doing it, or organizations or teams are doing it because it's time to do it. The 5 year has expired, and now we need to do another strategic plan,
Yeah.
right? So when you
Yeah.
get caught up in that, and same with nonprofits who are operating
Hmm.
from the grant requirements, and they have to have a
Hmm.
strategic plan in order to meet those requirements.
Hmm.
So I, I wonder what does it look like for that team or that organization that has to do it, otherwise they won't get financial support.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, I mean, I think that some of the, first of all, no matter what, my definition of strategic planning is always what are the most important conversations for this group to have right now. Right? And I just wrote about that on my blog. In other words, if you could start out, when we this is getting a little bit granular. I do talk about it in the book. When we do planning, we always think about a focus question. So you want to start out with what are the 2 or 3 key issues that we want to focus on as we do planning? Is it recruitment and retention? Is it fundraising or finances? Is it just like the quality of our program? Whatever it is. So no matter what, by by taking that time to say, what do we want to focus on? You're already strengthening planning, I think, versus, and that's where you start to get like, you become proactive rather than reactive. We're not just doing this because someone said we had to, but we're actually saying, what do we care about? Yeah. I don't know if you have any, Irina, I don't know if you have any reaction. You are nodding.
Yeah,
So,
no, 100%. I was hoping that would be your your
yeah,
answer too,
yeah.
because I find that especially those who have gone through top strategic planning course kind of miss that
Hmm.
part. Like
Hmm.
1/10 of a book in the manual is focusing on helping people answer the question you're raising here. What is the question we need to be strategic about? What's the change we want to see
Hmm.
as a result of our
Hmm.
planning process?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, and I think that is a good segue to my next section, which is on inclusion. Okay. So thank you for that. So yeah, so in one of the questions that some people have asked me is, what is inclusive strategic planning? Why are you writing about inclusion specifically? And, why even another book on strategic planning? We already have a bunch of books on strategic planning. My response has been a lot of these methods talk about planning, but they kind of forget that there are people involved in planning. So this is really putting the people front and center because it creates a much better plan. So and process. So just to give some definitions, what is inclusive strategic planning? Inclusion is a dynamic state where individuals and groups feel safe, respected, engaged, motivated and valued for who they are and their contributions to organizational and societal goals. Okay. In other words, you feel good, you feel encouraged, you feel heard, affirmed, listened to, all of that. Okay. And why does this matter in terms of teams? Research tells us the most effective teams are those where team members create psychological safety, are doing work that's personally meaningful, and believe their work matters and creates change. Okay, so and that's from Google's research on teams. Yeah, I mean, I think that I see some people nodding. I think that if you could think about what does it feel like to be part of an inclusive team versus a not inclusive team, it's we could probably spend another few hours talking about that too. So it's powerful to honor inclusion, and inclusion is designed into the process. So how do you make strategic planning inclusive? A couple of ideas, and these will be familiar to those of you who are passionate about top methods. So one of them is use participatory methods, right? Just by putting people's ideas on the wall and letting everyone look at them and say, "Oh wow, what do I think of that?" And also even just and that's the virtual wall or IRL wall. Um, Also, it's interesting. We were talking about this recently. Just by putting something on the wall, you're letting each person in the group assess the idea without saying like that idea belongs to Joe, right? So it's actually like it depersonalizes some of the conflict and some of the tension. Like I never liked Joe's ideas, but wait, he actually put something up there that is really interesting, and I wanna, and I wanna learn more about it. Involve more people, especially people who will be doing the work and are closer to the challenges the organization is working on. Be transparent about decision making and power, and build in communication throughout the process. So these are some ideas. In the book, each of those 5 stages of strategic planning includes some bullet points on communication. And this was something that beta readers asked me a lot about. How do you in other words, the process is as important as the product. So then, how do you build that in? I'm just curious. I'm gonna I'm gonna talk more about my little concentric circles in a minute, but is there one of these, as you look at these, is there one that really resonates with you?
Like one that immediately like got me nodding my head yes was the second bullet point, involve more people, as um especially those that are actually going to be doing the work and who are the ones closer to the challenges that the organization
Mm-hmm.
is working on. By involving those people, when making those decisions, through that strategic thinking, they're going to have so much
Yeah.
more buy-in, to
Hmm.
want to actually, start implementing those projects versus like, here's another project, like, here's something I
Yeah.
thought of that I think is important. So, and now you go and do it.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, wait, why are you piling all this on me versus, like,
Yeah.
hey, I had part in, coming up with that idea. I, you know, I now want to see it through. So I think that's so
Mm.
key.
Hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Megan. Yeah. It's funny because it's sort of it's one of these like win-win things, right? If you involve people who are building the goals are going to be better, and then people are going to feel connected to them as well. Yeah. Zachary,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, it tells the whole story. The why we're doing what we're doing,
Yeah.
get your input, and then they have the knowledge of what they're doing is benefiting, like you said, benefiting the organization. But one thing that really stood out to me was building communication throughout the process.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
often we find ourselves with having, been brought into a room for a meeting about a change, or we're working on a change, and then you hear crickets. Are we still working on this? Is this still happening? What's the hang up, or where are we at with it? And then it loses momentum and the buy-in because they don't think it's ever going to happen, or the follow through, or they've had failures in the past where things weren't followed through on, or that something's changed. So one thing I always tell my employees, or future leaders, is no news is not good news. The
Hmm.
unknown is the
Hmm.
biggest fear factor in your position, in
Hmm.
your job. Whether you're uncertain about your job or uncertain about the direction the organization's heading, that communication, I know it's
Yeah.
kind of in of all of our worlds right now. It's what the whole tops thing is about, is communicating with your team and letting them communicate back to you on what their thoughts are and being included in the process. The communication is the biggest thing that stood out to me, is that fall
Thank you.
and the follow through for
Hmm.
sure.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
j-
and
uh,
oh, go ahead.
We have one other attendee is trying to join in. It might be too late for her, but she wanted to listen in on the strategic planning if we could let her in. I'm not sure if she's it's Julie Richards might be trying to join.
Okay. I'll nobody else right now in the waiting room,
Okay.
but I'll keep an eye. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Um, And I did put in there, and so I'll talk. I did put in there to be transparent about decision making and power. So just to be clear, what the different roles are going to be in the process. And that kind of goes into these different roles that we created. So three concentric circles: deciders, builders, and sharers, right? I think a lot of processes have deciders. That's pretty obvious, or it's like the people who make the ultimate decision. A lot of processes have sharers, and that's might be people who are doing focus groups or interviews, or when you're doing that data collection. So it's really this level in here, the builders, that is more characteristic of top strategic planning, let's say. And what that means is that there are a group of people, and sometimes it is the whole staff, depending, the staff and board, the leadership team, but the people who are actually going to be doing that work going forward, who are building the practical vision, right? So what do we want to see in place in the next 3 years as a result of our actions, and are also building the goals for the plan. And that means that those people get to say, okay, I think we can raise another $1 million next year. I think we can move this program or add this program to an additional county, or we can't, but it's actually the people who are going to be doing it, who are a little bit closer to that work, who are weighing in on these different parts of the plan. So the question I have for you is, for your organization, based on what you've heard so far, I just gave this a very, very like on one foot description. Who would be the people in each category, and what questions come up?
I guess what uh, a question that kind of pops into my head is what happens like when your deciders, builders, and um sharers are all the same people? Like, does that have
Ooh.
any impact if you have
Uh-huh.
a very
Uh-huh.
small organization? And so you might invite a few additional people in, but your kind of core team are filling like all
Hmm.
three of those roles.
Can you share a little bit more, Megan? Yeah. I need a little more context to understand. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, just like I was thinking of, from like it more like internal standpoint, Irina and I have done all sorts of strategic planning like throughout the years, but we're a
Hmm.
very small organization, and so we,
Hmm.
oftentimes will invite um I don't want to say like subcontractors because I feel like that's too informal. More, like partners, like people who work alongside us, who share our mission, and vision and everything, and who very much want to work alongside us in like a partnership role. But it's, when you're looking at um full timers, it's kind of her and I right now. And so it's like we're filling all of those roles, and then
Mm. Hmm.
who else to bring in and at what level.
Yeah.
Do we do that like when
Hmm.
how much decision making or building and doing power do you kind of give to those people? But just being very small, strategic planning can be such a huge thing. And how do you
Hmm.
do that with such a small organization? And
Yeah.
I also, as kind of a side thing, own and operate very small community theater organization. We're just coming up on 1 year since we established, and we could probably benefit from some more long-term kind of strategic thinking as we think about the future of our organization and what is it ultimately that we're trying to build. But there are two of us. And so it's
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
is the strategic planning process
Yeah.
like an appropriate process when you are working with a very small and intimate team that are filling all the shoes and wearing all the
Yeah,
hats?
and I love this question. I think it's so funny how sometimes you see things and they actually you create a framework and it leads to new questions. So what just came to mind for me is, I think this actually like I would my question would be, who are the sharers and what information needs to be gathered, even if you have a really small process. And so if you have a community theater, are there some other people out there, community members, who you want to bring in to talk about their experience, their vision, what they want, even to do a survey or focus groups or interviews or whatever it is. Um, yeah, I mean, I think this layer, the outer layer, is really about remaining relevant, honestly, because it seems like if you're only looking inward and it's the same people kind of making all the decisions and building the vision and deciding, and kind of seeing what the determining the community context, for me that would be a little bit concerning. Irina, yeah.
Yeah, I unmuted just to welcome Julie. Julie, welcome, for thanks for joining us, but also to share a lot of our um, clients and students who are learning facilitation tools are working within government sector, and that's
Hmm.
a different kind of environment in which um, the elected officials set the bigger vision
Hmm.
and work on strategy, and then department directors do, and then within each department, a team convenes. So it's a little bit more complex.
Hmm.
And so I would wonder, and they ask these questions of us all the time, who should be involved in this retreat, right? Like we have this 2 day strategic
Right.
planning retreat, who should we be
Yeah.
inviting to that retreat? And so I think what we talked about before, the question drives that.
Hmm.
Who are the
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
who have the
Yeah.
expertise, the
Hmm.
knowledge, who will be
Yeah.
most impacted as a result of us strategizing around that initial
Hmm.
question we just came up with, would be my answer. And then figure out
Hmm.
that we have representation from all of those circles in the room during that retreat to make sure that decisions are made and the builders are there to know what to build and the sharers are there to know what to what to spread.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. And so it's interesting how just even the some a key idea of this is like, and I kind of geek out on this stuff, but the design really matters. And you can with like design can lead to communication, which can then that communication and conversations can then impact design, like going back and forth, right? So in other words, wow, let's think about who is in these groups. Do we have the right people? We value an inclusive process. We value multiple perspectives, and we're noticing we don't have that yet, right? And so, how do we be more mindful and shift our design a little bit?
And especially as organizations, again, in local government, especially, have
Hmm.
gone in Minnesota specifically. So I don't know, Zach, if it relates to you guys in Waco yet, but this effort in terms of including community in strategic work, we
Hmm.
have been
Hmm. Hmm.
part of,
Hmm.
fortunate enough to support so many different communities here, county and city government, in this community-wide effort. And sometimes there is a disconnect between what community effort produced and what can be done and what the city or county has actually capacity to deliver on.
Hi, this is
Yeah.
Julie. I just wanted to chime in. Thanks for the introduction. Yes, but I would say that's actually very relevant to what we're doing now. We're working with
Mhm.
with a department who struggles with that there's managers who overrun the participants. So the structure is, and the goal is the same, but how do you
Hmm.
make it
Hmm.
where the sharers will feel safe enough to share without managers shaping the
Hmm.
conversation? So yes, that does come up a lot, and to Irina's
Uh-huh.
point a lot too is, we're all decision makers in the room, but we all have different levels of that decision making. So that doesn't always result with one stakeholder or reside with one stakeholder. So assessing who needs to be in what group and
Yeah.
how to
Hmm.
plan that really has come up a lot as we are practicing in our own organization. So I think this is very timely for us to hear your feedback.
That's great. Yeah, and you just reminded me. I mean, I think the key idea, which I've written about on my blog a lot, is people's voices matter in planning, right? People's voices matter, and that is actually something where maybe people feel like their voices haven't mattered in the past. And
Yeah.
so by doing a process like this and saying we want to hear from you in different ways and also being transparent. Like we're not saying that 20 people together have equal decision-making power and are going to build this because that might not be the culture of your organization, and also from our experience can lead to a lot of chaos, right? So it's okay to say, hey, we have, for in the processes we work on, 2 to 5 people who are those deciders and who are going to make the ultimate decisions about the plan. And then there is this other layer of people, a lot of people who are going to weigh in terms of the goals and sharers. maybe if they don't feel comfortable speaking up, maybe you're doing a survey to get their feedback, maybe you're doing focus groups, whatever it is, where people feel like they can weigh in on, on the direction of the organization. Also, there's this balance because just acknowledging not everything's going to be actionable. We're going to hear some feedback. We're not going to you might have an amazing idea that we're not going to be able to act on this year. And that is also a realistic part of strategic planning. And a lot more is going to be generated than you're going to be able to act on. Any other comments? Jennifer, I don't know if anything you want to add here? Yeah, no, you're good. Okay. All right, I think I'm gonna keep going on this. Let's see here. Oh, I put these in and let's see, it's just a couple of ideas about strategic planning in uncertain times. So yeah, I think these are um, reinforced in what we've been talking about. A lot of people think strategic planning is going to take 4 to 9 months. So there is this idea if you need to do a more abbreviated process, you can. And I think that kind of goes back to where you are in terms of readiness. Um, yeah, we need this. I think this came up earlier also. We need to focus on managing crises rather than planning, right? If you're always managing crises, that there's something wrong. Taking that time to create focus and alignment is really gonna help everything to work better. And so I would say, going back to what is our focus question? What do we want to focus on? What do we need to align on? It does not need to be super complicated, but it's just these sort of key questions that you're looking at. And if you have any comments, feel free to chime in here. So yeah, gosh, I found this one really, really interesting because everything is so uncertain now. We need to tighten up how we share information and make decisions. I think that is a natural tendency. There's a lot of uncertainty. How much can we kind of be open? And we're just really encouraging people to keep valuing and keep leaning towards collaboration and openness to different perspectives. This is where it almost feels a little bit like countercultural in this moment.
Mhm.
So that's where it's like, okay, just stay the course, or say this is part of our values. We value collaboration and openness to different perspectives, and we're gonna show that in how we design planning. And last one, most important part, and I think this kind of goes back to your question, Irina, from earlier. Most important part is that document, right? I don't know if there's one thing I could get on my soapbox about, it's, the conversations that create the plan are as important as the final document. Okay. So, and I think that's a myth that a lot of people have, like, okay, it's just about we got to just write something down. We've even heard, we've had people reach out to us and say, okay, could you just create a plan for us? I can't create your plan. It's coming from you.
AI can do
Yeah.
that, though. That's another conversation topic now, right? Like, what's a role and a resource that AI can offer in
Yeah.
terms of if that's what you need, just an answer. Perhaps you have a partner in that that's not a human. But if you want people to really be motivated, to really get on the same page, to move forward as
Hmm.
humans, then it's a whole different process.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
speaks to what I was saying earlier about, sharing and trusting your staff to, to realize that they're being made a part of the conversation and being made aware so that there's not discourse behind the scenes that's pushing against the grain, so to speak. And
Hmm.
having clear transparency will definitely helps eliminate that. And they do know they know the lay of the land and what the plan is, so there's no uncertainty there.
Hmm. Hmm. Thank you. Um, so I think I'm kind of, oh yeah, I put the spiral in there just so you can kind of see it. But yeah, I we are in our last 2 minutes. Oh, and so yeah, I just put in the link if you want to buy the book, Inclusive Strategic Planning, right here. And I'm still collecting reviews. If you have a chance to review, I'd love it. And I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, I do have a my own newsletter, the Ross Collective. Subscribe. If you want to subscribe and get we post about twice a month on strategic planning, equity, and leadership. And I think that's a good stopping point. Thank you to HueLife. I will take off my screen. Oh, I think the one other thing I wanted to mention is I am teaching a strategic planning course through Cal State East Bay. And it starts, I'll send you the link also. It starts on June 2nd. So it's a 6-hour course for
Wow.
anyone who might be interested. June 2nd and June 9th in the evenings from 5 to 8.
Is
So
that
yeah,
Is that,
virtual, Renee?
it
yeah,
is virtual. Yes, we could have people from all over the world. Yeah,
absolutely.
come.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm interested in that. Thank you.
cool. Great. So Irina, Megan, thank you so much. It's good to be here. And Julie and Zachary, thank you for joining, chiming in. We had some others who had to get to their meetings. But
Sure.
yeah, yeah.
Dr. Ross, I just had a quick question. So, I mean,
Uh-huh.
the strategic planning as a standard, right? So what was the need that you saw to I know you kind of alluded to it earlier. I think Julie missed that apart, but what was your motivation for generating documentation on an inclusive strategic
Hmm.
planning? It's it's such
Yeah.
a need, but are there other facets of strategic planning that you think need to be covered besides the inclusivity part that you might be interested in writing about, or kind of what the motivation was for that?
I think what we notice is that there's a big learning curve with strategic planning. And
Sure, sure.
so people get a little bit, and I think this does go back to communication because like right when the project starts, like, okay, who's going to participate and when are all the meetings going to be? And there's just all these things that need to even just what are we talking about? How's this going to go? And what's going to be created? And what
Yeah.
is a vision? What are goals? So that's
Hmm.
where I think like taking it down and just being down a little bit and just being like, okay, this is about what, in simple terms, what do we, the group, want to make happen and move
Hmm.
forward based on with that zoom back of our context. And that is kind of that simple definition.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or
Yeah,
not.
you did that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of the motivation and the needs.
Hmm.
All right. Well,
Hmm.
that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks for your time. It was great to be here for the hour. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.